A baby has not slept in 3 nights.
It's okay, little one.
Neither has his father.
Your daddy's right here.
Every woman in the county has tried to quiet him. Nothing has worked. Then, on the 4th night, with a storm rolling over the Wyoming plains, a stranger climbs the porch steps of a lonely ranch house and knocks once. Nobody in that house knows her name. Nobody has a reason to trust her. But the moment she lifts the crying child into her arms, the crying stops. The father stands in the doorway, unable to move, because for the first time since he buried his wife, his home sounds like a home again. Stay with this story to the end, because before the sun rises on this Wyoming ranch, a stranger's kindness will be tested by lies, by fear, and by a town that judges too quickly, and you will see why the people we fear the most are sometimes the very people sent to save us. Subscribe to see how this unfolds, and comment where you're watching from. I would love to say hello and know how far along our story has traveled with you. Autumn had turned the grass along the Wind River gold, and smoke curled from the chimney of the Boone Ranch house the way it always had, as if nothing inside had changed. But everything had. Silas Boone stood on the porch with his son in his arms, rocking on his heels the way he had rocked every night for 3 months, humming a tune he could not remember the words to. Micah screamed into his shoulder, small fists beating against his father's collarbone, and Silas felt every one of those months pressing down on him at once. 3 months since Naomi had died, bringing this boy into the world. 3 months since the house had gone quiet in every way that mattered, even with a baby crying in it around the clock. "Come on now," Silas whispered. "Your mama used to sing to you before you were even born. I never learned the words. I'm sorry, son. I'm trying." The wind carried his voice off toward the mountains, and nobody answered him, because there was nobody left to answer. By morning the fences on the east pasture were down again, and Silas hadn't the strength to fix them. He had turned away 2 ranch hands that week because he could no longer pay them on time. The cattle wandered where they pleased. The garden Naomi had planted in the spring had gone to weeds. A ranch that once fed half the county now barely fed itself. Zeke Mercer rode over most mornings to check on his oldest friend, and most mornings he found Silas asleep sitting up in a chair with the baby finally quiet against his chest. "You can't keep doing this alone, Silas," Zeke said, dropping a sack of feed by the door. "Man needs sleep like a horse needs water. You go without either one long enough, you break down. I don't have a choice. You could hire a woman to help with the boy. With what money? And who'd want the job? Every widow within 20 miles has already turned it down. They say this house has too much sorrow in the walls." Silas rubbed a hand over his face. "Maybe they are right." Zeke didn't have an answer for that, so he did what a good friend does. He stayed a while longer and said nothing else about it. The storm came in off the mountains just after supper, the kind that turned the dirt road into a river of mud within an hour. Silas had given up trying to settle Micah and was simply walking him back and forth across the front room when he heard a knock at the door. He almost didn't answer. Visitors rarely came this late, and he had no patience left for company. But the knock came again, softer this time, almost apologetic, and he crossed the room with the baby still crying against his shoulder. The woman on his porch was soaked through, her dark hair plastered to her face, a small carpet bag clutched in one hand and a worn Bible tucked beneath her arm. She could not have been older than 25, and there was a tiredness in her that went deeper than one bad storm. "I'm sorry to trouble you this late," she said. "My name is Eliza Rowan. I saw your light from the road. I don't have anywhere else to go tonight." Silas looked at her the way a man looks at one more problem he cannot afford. "I've got nothing to offer a boarder. I can't even pay my own hands." "I'm not asking to be paid," Liza said. "I'm asking for a dry place to sleep. The barn will do fine, and I'll work for my meals. I can cook, I can mend, I can manage a house. I noticed your fence is down along the east pasture too. I can help with more than you'd expect from someone standing in your doorway soaked to the bone." Micah's crying rose to a full wail, and Silas winced, bouncing him out of habit more than hope. Eliza's eyes went to the baby, and something in her face softened in a way that made Silas pause. "May I?" she asked. He should have said no. He barely knew this woman's name. But 3 months of sleepless nights had worn down every instinct he had left, and he handed his son to a stranger standing in his doorway in the rain. Eliza drew Micah against her shoulder, murmured something too quiet for Silas to hear, and swayed gently from side to side. Within a minute, the baby's cries softened to hiccups. Within 2 minutes, he was asleep. Silas stared at his son's closed eyes as if he were looking at a miracle he did not understand. "How did you?" "He's not upset, Mr. Boone. He's exhausted, same as you. Babies feel everything a house feels. If the house is grieving, the baby grieves too. He just needed somebody who wasn't already carrying so much sorrow of her own to hold him steady." Silas didn't answer right away. Rain drummed against the windows. Somewhere behind his ribs, something that had been clenched tight for 3 months loosened, just slightly. "There's a cot in the barn," he said finally. "It's not much, but it's dry. We'll talk about wages once I see whether this arrangement works." "That's all I'm asking for," Eliza said. "A chance to prove I'm worth keeping." The first week, Eliza rose before the sun and had the stove going, the floors swept, and a breakfast on the table before Silas came down from checking the herd. She fixed the east fence herself on the 3rd day, driving posts with a strength that surprised him, and when he asked where she'd learned ranch work, she only said, "I grew up around cattle, before things changed for my family," and did not offer more. Micah, who had cried for anyone who was not his own exhausted father, settled into Eliza's arms like he had always belonged there. By the 2nd week he was sleeping through most of the night for the first time since he was born. Silas found himself laughing again, small, rusty laughs at first, the kind a man forgets he still knows how to make. One evening Eliza burned the cornbread so badly that smoke rolled out the kitchen window, and when Silas came running in from the barn expecting a fire, he found her waving a dish towel at the stove and muttering at it like it had personally wronged her. "I can drive fence posts into hard ground with one arm," she said, "and I cannot make a simple pan of cornbread." "Everybody's got one thing," Silas said, grinning for the first time in longer than he could remember. "Guess cornbread's yours. Don't tell the whole county. Wouldn't dream of it." It was a small moment, and neither of them thought much of it at the time, but it was the first real conversation they'd had that wasn't about chores or the baby, and something between them shifted a little that night, quiet and unspoken. Not every part of the arrangement was easy. Micah still cried at odd hours, and Eliza sometimes woke from the barn to sit with him at 3 in the morning so Silas could finally rest. She never complained about it. When Silas thanked her one morning for doing it again, she only shrugged and said, "Child shouldn't have to cry alone in the dark. Nobody should." There was a weight behind those words that told him she wasn't only talking about Micah, but he didn't press her. Not yet. By the end of the first month, the ranch looked like a place worth saving again. The garden had been replanted. The cattle were accounted for. 2 of the ranch hands Silas had let go came back on their own, saying they'd heard the Boone place was thriving again and they wanted back in on it. Reverend Amos Whitaker stopped by on a Sunday and found Silas mending a saddle on the porch while Eliza hung wash on the line with Micah babbling happily in a basket nearby. "This place has some life back in it," the Reverend said. "Good to see, Silas. Naomi would be glad of it." Silas glanced toward Eliza and didn't answer right away. "I don't rightly know how to explain what's happened here, Reverend. I just know my son sleeps at night now. And so do I. Sometimes the Lord doesn't send an answer the way we expect it," Whitaker said. "Sometimes he sends it walking up a muddy road in the middle of a storm." Not everyone in the county was glad to see the Boone Ranch flourishing again. Gideon Voss had spent 2 years trying to buy Silas out, first with fair offers, then with offers that grew less fair once Silas kept refusing. Gideon's land bordered the Boone Ranch on its richest side, the side with the creek, and he had made no secret of wanting it. A struggling widower with a colicky baby had been an easy man to wait out. A widower with a thriving ranch and a woman running his household was not. Gideon rode into town one afternoon and found Warren Pike, his former foreman, drinking alone at the saloon. Pike had left Gideon's employ under circumstances neither man discussed openly, but the two still shared certain useful histories. "That woman working out at the Boone place," Gideon said, sliding into the seat across from him. "Dark hair, quiet, keeps to herself. Name's Eliza Rowan." Pike's face changed the moment he heard the name. "Eliza Rowan is at the Boone Ranch. You know her?" Pike's jaw tightened. "I know her family used to run cattle 2 counties over, before I had some dealings with them. She's the reason I lost my last position before I came to work for you. Girl accused me of things that weren't true and got half the county believing her. That was not, in fact, the truth, but it was the version Warren Pike had been telling for years, and by now he almost believed it himself." Gideon smiled slowly. "Then it seems you and I have the same interest in seeing Miss Rowan somewhere far away from that ranch." By the following week, word had spread through Clara Bell's general store, the safest place in town for a rumor to take root, that the woman living at the Boone Ranch had once been run out of her home county for theft, and that decent folks ought to be careful how much trust they placed in Silas Boone's judgment these days. Clara herself did not believe a word of it. Eliza had come into her store every Saturday since arriving, always polite, always paying her small bill in full, always asking after Clara's arthritis before her own business. "I don't know what she's meant to have stolen," Clara told her husband, "but I know a hard-working woman when I see one, and I've seen plenty of both kinds in my life. Still, rumors do not need truth to travel. They only need repetition." Winter came early that year, and with it came long evenings by the fire that Silas found himself looking forward to more than he wanted to admit. He and Eliza fell into a rhythm that felt less like an arrangement and more like a life. She read to Micah from her worn Bible in the evenings, and Silas took to sitting nearby with mending in his hands, listening more to her voice than to the words themselves. One night, after Micah had finally drifted off, Eliza sat by the fire with her knees drawn up and her arms wrapped around them, staring into the flames the way a person stares when they are somewhere else entirely. "You don't talk much about your family," Silas said. "Neither do you, about Naomi." He considered that. "She used to sit right where you're sitting. Same spot by the fire. I haven't been able to look at it in 3 months. And now? Now I don't mind it so much." He said it quietly, almost surprised at himself. Eliza looked at him for a long moment. "My family raised cattle same as you, out past the Sweetwater country. We lost the ranch when I was 17, not to weather or bad luck, but to a man who wanted it and wasn't particular about how he got it. He spread lies about my father, and about me, until the whole county believed we were people not worth trusting. I've been proving myself to strangers ever since." "Is that why you never ask for wages up front? Why you work like you owe somebody a debt?" "I suppose I've learned it's easier to let my work speak before my name does. Names carry rumors. Work doesn't lie." Silas set his mending aside. "Your work's spoken plenty in this house, Eliza. So has the rest of you." It was as close as either of them had come to saying something neither was ready to name outright, and for a moment the only sound in the room was the fire settling in the grate and Micah's soft breathing from his cradle. Eliza's cheeks colored, and she looked away first, but she was smiling when she did it. That was the night Silas understood, without needing anyone to tell him, that his house had not simply healed, it had begun to hope again, and hope had Eliza's face. The peace lasted through the new year, and then Gideon Voss made his move. He rode to the sheriff's office with Warren Pike beside him and laid out an old account book, doctored just enough to suggest that Eliza Rowan had absconded with cattle sale money from a ranch 2 counties over, years before. Pike swore to it under oath. It was, of course, a lie built from a true grievance turned inside out. Eliza had refused Pike's advances as a girl of 17, and he had spent years making her pay for that refusal in the only currency he had, which was her reputation. Sheriff Daniel Reyes rode out to the Boone Ranch on a gray Tuesday morning with the warrant in his coat pocket and a look on his face that told Silas this would not be a friendly visit. "I have to bring her in for questioning, Silas. There's a sworn statement and a ledger with her name in it." "This is Gideon Voss's doing," Silas said. You know as well as I do he's wanted this land for 2 years. Doesn't matter what I know, Silas. Matters what's sworn to in an official complaint. I've got no choice but to follow it. Eliza came out onto the porch, Micah on her hip, and her face had gone pale but steady. I'll come, Sheriff. I've nothing to hide, and running would only make me look guilty of something I've never done. Silas stepped between her and the sheriff before he could think better of it. Then I'm coming with you. You don't have to do that, Eliza said quietly. I know I don't have to. He looked at her, and for once there was no hesitation in his voice at all. I'm choosing to. By the time they reached town, half the county had already heard the news, and the ones who hadn't were hearing it from Clara Bell's store within the hour. Some folks who had smiled at Eliza on Sundays now crossed to the other side of the street rather than meet her eyes. It was a hard lesson in how quickly a community that had welcomed a stranger's helping hands could turn its back the moment that stranger's name was put in doubt, a lesson Silas never forgot, long after that winter had passed. The town meeting was called for Thursday, in the church hall, since half the county wanted to hear the matter settled one way or another. Gideon Voss stood near the front with the look of a man who believed he had already won. Warren Pike sat beside him, refusing to meet Eliza's eyes. This woman worked her way into a grieving man's home, Gideon told the gathered room, and now we learn she has a history of theft 2 counties over. I only raised this out of concern for Silas Boone and his son. A murmur ran through the hall. Silas stood, jaw set, ready to speak, when the church doors opened and an old woman walked in, leaning on a cane, carrying a leather satchel against her chest. Martha Quinn had once kept house for the Rowan family, back before they lost everything, and she had not forgotten a single detail of what had truly happened. I've got something you all ought to hear before you finish judging this girl, Martha said, her voice carrying clear across the hall. She set the satchel on the front table and pulled out an old ledger, water-stained but legible, along with a bundle of letters. This is the real account book from the Rowan Ranch, kept separate from the one Warren Pike doctored for his own purposes. And these letters are from Warren Pike himself, written to a man he thought he could trust with the truth, admitting what he did to Eliza and her family after she refused him. The room went silent enough to hear the wind against the windows. Warren Pike has been dying of a bad heart for the better part of a year, Martha continued. Before he passed last month, he gave me these letters and asked me to see that the truth came out, even if it came too late to help him. He said he owed Eliza Rowan that much, at least, before he met his maker. Gideon's face had drained of color. Pike, who had lied his way through a sworn statement days earlier, said nothing at all, because there was nothing left to say. Sheriff Reyes examined the ledger and the letters carefully, then looked up at the room. This clears Miss Rowan of any wrongdoing, past or present. And it raises some serious questions for Mr. Voss and the statement he brought to my office. Silas stood, and every eye in the hall turned to him. I want it said plainly, in front of everyone here, since plenty of you were quick enough to whisper about her behind closed doors. If anyone still wants to call Eliza Rowan a thief after this, they can call me one too, because I trust her with my son, my ranch, and my heart, and I have from the night she walked up my road in the rain. Eliza's eyes filled, and for the first time since the sheriff had ridden onto the ranch, she allowed herself to believe this might truly be over. At that exact moment, Micah, who Clara Bell had been holding at the back of the hall, reached both arms toward Eliza and said the first clear word of his life. Mama. The whole room seemed to hold its breath, and then somebody near the back began to clap, and within a moment half the hall had joined in, because sometimes a room full of people needs a small miracle to remind them what mattered all along. That evening, once the ranch had gone quiet again, Silas took down an old journal from a shelf he had not touched since Naomi's passing. He had avoided it for 3 months, unable to bear reading her handwriting. Tonight, for reasons he could not fully explain, he opened it. Near the final pages, dated only weeks before Micah was born, Naomi had written, "If anything should happen to me, I pray my husband does not spend his life alone in his grief. I pray God sends someone kind enough to love our son the way I would have, and patient enough to love Silas back to himself. I do not know who that might be. I only know our home deserves to be full of life again, whoever brings it. Silas read the passage 3 times before he could trust his own voice. When Eliza found him sitting with the journal open in his lap, he handed it to her without a word and let her read it herself. "She wrote this before she ever knew you'd exist," Silas said. "But I don't think she'd have been surprised." Eliza wiped her eyes and said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, "I think I'd have liked her very much." "She'd have liked you more than anyone I've ever brought through that door," Silas said. "And she'd have told me to stop wasting time asking you the right way to say what I already feel." "Then don't waste it," Eliza said softly. Gideon Voss left the county within the month, his reputation ruined by his own scheme, and nobody in town shed any tears over the loss of his company. Warren Pike's letters had done what years of honest complaints never could. They'd finally made the truth louder than the lie. In the spring, Silas asked Eliza to marry him beneath the old cottonwood tree near Naomi's grave, a choice he made carefully and told Eliza plainly. "I want to honor where I've been," he said, "while I build where I'm going. I hope that doesn't trouble you." "It would trouble me more if you didn't," Eliza said. "A man who honors the love he's lost is a man who knows how to love well. I'd never ask you to forget her. I only hope there's room enough in your heart for both of us." "There's room enough," Silas said. "You made sure of that the night you walked up my road." They married that June, with Reverend Whitaker presiding, Clara Bell weeping happily in the front pew, and Zeke Mercer standing as best man with a grin he couldn't wipe off his face all day. Micah, year-old and steady on his feet by then, took his very first unaided steps during the celebration, wobbling straight from his father's hands into Eliza's, as if he understood exactly where he belonged. The Boone Ranch flourished in the years that followed, not because misfortune stopped finding its way to their door, it never entirely does, for any family, but because they had learned, together, that a house survives its hardest seasons through patience, honesty, and the courage to trust someone new when trusting seems hardest. If there is one thing this story leaves behind, it is this. Judge a person by the work of their hands and the truth of their actions, not by the loudest rumor spoken about them. Grief does not have to be the end of a family's story. Sometimes it is only the quiet beginning of one, waiting on a stranger to knock at the door. Subscribe to see how this unfolds, and comment where you're watching from. I would love to say hello and know just how far along our story has traveled with you.